You.
I'm Tori Bedford. Tonight on Greater Boston, a group of formerly incarcerated residents in Nubian Square are taking protection and community outreach into their own hands, without the handcuffs and guns. I'll talk to the group's leaders ahead. Plus, what exactly is girl math, and what does it say about women, sexism, and the economy? These guards in Roxbury's Nubian Square have become pillars in their community. Easy to spot in their bright yellow shirts, they serve as tour guides, crossing guards, and peacekeepers for anyone in need. They're employed by the nonprofit Nubian Square Foundation, and they're charged with protecting a community that's long felt like law enforcement has failed them. The guards all live in the area and have previously been incarcerated, giving them a personal connection and lived experience. I'm joined now by Will Dunn, the founder and president of the security group, and the group's coordinator and longtime gang outreach worker, Chris Womack. Will and Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about this group and the work that you do, but I know you have such a personal connection to this area. You grew up in Orchard Park. Will, can you talk about your journey from there? I mean, this whole neighborhood has changed, and you've changed so much with it. What's kind of your story to get here?
In a nutshell, my story is I was born addicted to heroin. My mother and father was substance abuse users. I grew up with my grandparents, went to Boston Public Schools, got to high school, caught a case, got locked up all my high school years. So I was part of the streets from probably 13 to 16, then got caught up with a case and did 5 years between DYS and got bound over to go to prison. Then came home, started going to church. So I got the community, Boston Public Schools, DYS, prisons, church. Then got into a nonprofit, started helping kids for after-school program. Moved up to the accounting, brought property, learned business. So I got a whole journey of everything under my belt, and it's just a transformation from the past to now, and I've been out here since 21, 22 doing this type of work. I never want to gloat or be in the limelight or in the press ever. I always got negative press, and even today, you know, I wouldn't do this if I didn't have someone else to come here with me, because it's not about me, it's about everybody else, and the input and the push that we have in Nubian Square right now to teach different things instead of growing up into the system, learning things now so we can be effective, add value to people, change the economic development of the neighborhood, change your faith, what you believe in, change your education, change the poverty level. So we just on a whole big push to try to be different as Black people in the community.
I mean, you were 16 and you were charged as an adult, in which your case set a precedent legally for your part in a double murder. And then shortly after, you know, you were serving time, you were just a kid, really, getting caught up in things, which is crazy to think about how young that is. But then that kind of was the start of your relationship as well, right? You came in as a mentor and brought you on a different path, because I think, okay, so the work that you do with this group, it's all returning citizens. So it's people that have been previously incarcerated. Why did you want to create this group in the first place, and why returning citizens?
For me, returning citizens, because you know, they didn't have the word returning citizens when I came home. But a lot of us are smart and brilliant and can take the next steps if given the right chance. The stuff I went through as a kid, I believed that gang violence was what it was going to be. That was at my doorstep every day. That's what I believed in. I didn't believe in what a teacher would tell me in between the hours of 8 and 2 when I got to come home from 2 to the next day in the neighborhood. I believed in the neighborhood. I believed what was going on until I got a chance to go to prison, read some things, learn some things, talk to different lifers. My older brother on my father's side, he has a natural life sentence. So a lot of the things is, because he's in there and I'm out here, I still want to do right for him, but not just him. So like everyone that falls short to the gang violence or to the nature of the streets who don't know no better, you never know when it's your time to either be killed or to get natural life or do 15 to 20 as a juvenile. Our case changed the law where you could be a kid and get bound over to go to adult court real easy and fast. So a lot of kids that came after me got 15 to 20s, and I felt obligated to be out here that I was found not guilty to actually do something different, to help them out that's in there and to prove to other families around my neighborhood that I'm a changed individual.
Yeah, and so this started about 1.5 years ago.
Yes.
What was the process of that? You came to him, you came to Chris, and you said, I want to put this together. So how did that start?
happened just like that. When you say, why would we do this work with this population, the recidivism rate is so outrageous that something has to be institutionalized, and so leaders lead in times of crisis and trouble. So we've had a problem with recidivism since he was a child, but there's never been infrastructure for changing that. So when Will started working from one of our state reps asking, can we do something about the opioid crisis that was coming from Melina Cass around the corner, with honor, I came back to stand arm in arm with Will. So Will came to me and said, can you start a business in order to give staple economics to those that are coming home? Because once you see some rap sheets, many people aren't going to hire these guys. And so we don't care about your rap sheet. We hired you or fired you if you did or did not do your job. So that opportunity was presented.
Just to clarify, you came to State Representative China Tyler, who helped facilitate some of the original funds coming through the Nubian Square Foundation. And you're talking about during this time, the city was really focusing a lot on Mass and Cass, which is this concentration, this big homeless encampment, you know, on the border of the South End and Roxbury. I think that your work, it does a number of things. It focuses on opioid addiction and the opioid crisis. It focuses on recidivism and providing job opportunities for people who've been incarcerated, and also dealing with violence in the community. What does the day-to-day look like? So you're wearing the shirt. I know that you don't want to spend money on extra uniform, like new uniforms. So you have these shirts from your
not-for-profit.
It's an apprenticeship program that is another work development program, and they say soldiers on the back. I don't know if you can see. Maybe not, but yeah, there you go.
Okay, no, there you go.
But so it's God Soldiers is the name of it, and they're out pretty much. We walked around together for a few hours, and just in that time, you know, I saw a guard who helped this woman who was experiencing an opioid overdose, and another man, that elder gentleman who was under the umbrella, he was using heroin, and someone else, you know, there was an interaction with someone who was urinating outside the senior home. There were people who you had to speak to about violence in their community, like young men who you were concerned about getting into gang violence. I mean, all of this was happening in the span of, I think, like 3 or 4 hours.
Yes.
Is that kind of what the day-to-day looks like?
That is what the day-to-day looks like. And because we're trained individuals, like I used to be the outreach educator and trainer for the whole entire City of Boston youth unit. So I've been doing this work with this particular population for nearly 40 years now, as well as I'm a licensed clinician. I work out of 2 different behavioral health clinics. So not only we do the security component, if resources need to be referred out for specialty services, we're quite apt to do that as well.
You also were an outreach worker and member of the 10-Point Coalition, and you worked, we had this huge surge of youth violence in the 90s. That was when you were arrested and charged because you were involved in gang violence at the time. And so you were on that side of the table as a young person, and you were working on outreach at that time. What are we looking at right now? Because there's been so much discussion about community violence having another uptick, maybe not as bad as the times of the Boston Miracle, which was a response to that. But what are we, you know, and where does this organization play a role in that?
Well, to be able to be a deterrent, this organization operates as a deterrent. If you know, Nubian Square is the hub of major schools in the thruway.
Of the whole city, really,
Of the whole city, in the epicenter. With us being there, now the next thing is to branch out and do the services we're doing there in other neighboring communities so that we could even offset. The first thing is people capital. Once you have a relationship with the young people, naturally, out of respect, they're going to come down. That's the cultural competency piece where they're going to come down and not be a part of being the problem, but the solution that we're modeling. And I'm glad that you did say something about the 10-Point Coalition. I was physically 8 of the 10 points that started the 10-Point Coalition. So actually, I was doing, all they did was put it on paper and put it in a brochure form for what I was doing behind the scenes.
There were so many people that were involved in that movement. No one organization can take credit. What did the police think of your private security force, right? There's a police presence in Nubian Square, and it is their job to serve and protect the community. But I do think that what we've seen, you kind of offer this harm reduction approach in a lot of ways. I mean, the guards don't have weapons. They really have to develop relationships and work through conversations. We reached out to the BPD to see asked for comment. They haven't gotten back to us yet. But what do they think of your work?
The law enforcement think we're rock stars, as a matter of fact. We've done with literally almost a budget on a string what they couldn't do with tens of millions of dollars because of the cultural competency and us being a part of the community. So that added weight of rapport in the community allows us to be able to have inroads that law enforcement can. Just the historical, you know this better than anybody, piece that a lot of communities of color have with law enforcement. We have an added approach, and they've appreciated partnering with us and asked us to be there, because there was a period of time, because of funding questions, when we weren't there, law enforcement came and got us. They went to safety meetings and said, we need those guys back in Nubian Square. And 80%, they have this documented, when they get back in touch with you, ask them, 80% of the 911 calls went down with our presence being there in Nubian Square.
Okay. Well, I witnessed you approach a man who I mentioned who was relieving himself outside the senior home and have a conversation with him that kind of began with a little bit of conflict, and eventually you just like fist bumped, you gave him some resources. When you are approaching people, how do you, what sets you apart from, you know, calling in a cop to do a wellness check or having, what is your kind of methodology?
Well, one, I'm from the community, so I'm not going to call the police on you. Second, and I'm here to listen to you. I'm not here to go grab you, put my hands on you to tell you, get out of here and stop what you're doing. All I'm here to do is listen to you. And 9 times out of 10, when somebody's escalated up to here, when they start talking, they swearing, they cussing, and it's okay, I'm still listening. The escalation comes down, then they start saying why they out here, and I'm listening, then it goes back to what even started them to be on substance abuse anyway, and then it goes to the resource part where if you're ready to try to do something, we can assist you and help you, or if you need a couple of dollars now, and get a couple of dollars now, but it's all about listening to the people that's out there, because I know coming from that side that if I had maybe other people to listen to instead of directing me, because I was bigger. I was, always had a little size, didn't know how to fight. People would drag me or want me to be around for that. But having the opportunity for someone to hear you out goes a long way.
Can you talk about that special skill set that people have when they get out? I mean, it's so difficult for people to get a job after they've been incarcerated, and they have a much higher chance of experiencing homelessness. So what kind of, you view it as this unique skill set?
Well, it's perspective. You come out, you listen to the world, which whatever you think the world is, and it's hard out here for black people to do this, X and Y and Z. I've been home since 21, and the law average, I'll put 300 applications in before I finally get a chance to speak to somebody, to have a conversation with, to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm trying to do, I know about this Corey and everything else. And then somebody, if you, enough time, somebody will give you a chance after speaking to somebody. So, but if you don't look at that, then the other part is hustling. I used to hustle on the street, so I worked 1, 2 jobs, start a small business. I would stay with 1 to 2, 3 jobs at all times on the understanding that I used to hustle, and there's no time clock on hustling. You hustle 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't matter. So when guys come home and we have these conversations in our groups, it becomes, wait a minute, you're absolutely right. Of course I can go get a job and try to facilitate to get another job. Of course I can go try to have my female have a family and try to be on this side of the tracks instead of being simple-minded or so-called Negroes, as people call us all the time. That's only because we didn't know. Once you know, you do better, and I haven't met no one yet. I met people that try, still mess up, but as long as they try and the effort is there, then we should be winning.
Yeah, and you're helping other people to do that, have those chances. Chris and Will, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for the work you do.
Thank you.
Next up, if you buy a shirt but return it later, did you make money? The financially sound answer is, of course not. But under the tenets of so-called girl math, a term that's trending across social media, that's exactly right.
Here's a list of things that I firmly believe because of girl math. Anything under $5 is free. Anything I buy with a gift card is free.
If the Starbucks app is loaded, the coffee is free. If my favorite store is having a sale, I have to buy something or I'm actually losing money.
If I pay for something with cash, it's free. If I buy something and then I return the item and get the money back, I've profited.
Girl math is obviously not real math, but it does touch on some major truths about women, sexism, and the economy. Here to help us break it all down are Julie Beckham, Financial Education Director with Rockland Trust Bank, and Belinda Rosenblum, CPA and Money Strategist. Thank you so much both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So
Yes.
what's girl math?
Girl math is a trend on TikTok that has exploded. And basically, it is justifying frivolous expenses in any way that you can think of. We just saw a few examples. But the dangerous part of girl math that I see is putting the word girl and math together in this context, which for me, as a financial educator, it reinforces a stereotype that girls aren't good with math or that girls can't make good financial decisions.
What's your take?
So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. I feel like the love part is I love that women are talking about handling money and that they have money, and we're not trying to deny the fact that we have money, right? And like load more shame or just fear or guilt or, all of the emotions we have around money and push those under the rug. So it's great that we're talking about it. And if you stop and think about it, it's a lot of behavioral economics that we're simplifying, a little oversimplifying, but like the idea of justifying purchases, that's your return on investment, right? Looking at expenses that you did last year and not feeling the impact of that, that's a sunk cost, right? So that part isn't terrible. The part that I don't like is partially the girl math and the playing into the stereotype that we're not good at it. And I think there's a part of it that actually never gets to the fact that you're saving money. You're somehow making money and making it more available to spend more.
Well, you're right. If there's a sale and you don't buy something on sale, you're actually losing money.
Right. But then when you can make money, right, when you return something, right, you spend $50, you're really...
That's free money.
It's free money.
There's a lot of free money. My interpretation was similar after watching maybe 50,000 TikToks.
Yes.
Well, before watching 50,000 TikToks, I thought, like, what is this, just like women be shopping? Like, is that what we're doing?
Right.
But I think it's more like, girl in TikTok world, where, again, I think this is a big joke. I think they're hilarious. I think they're in on it, because if there is a stereotype about women not being good with money or not being able to do math, then they're in on that stereotype, right? Because they know that it's a joke. They know that this isn't, you're not actually making money. Nobody's saying that in earnest. But I also think that the term girl means something else, because it's not women dinner.
It's like girl boss.
Right, or like girl, but not even like girl boss. It's more like girl, like, because it's cute and funny and lighthearted, right? I think that, we can acknowledge that that's a joke and like not ruin it for everybody, but I'm not saying you are, because I think it's an opening to a conversation where we can say, like, why is there that stereotype? Why do we have to approach this? It's approaching this bigger topic with humor, but the bigger topic, right, is that we just don't talk enough about finance, and women are very often excluded from that conversation. And there are so many barriers, which is what you both are kind of working on. Like, where do you see this as a vessel for where you can kind of, invite more women in? Belinda, you were saying, like, we're starting these conversations. Like, let's talk about sunken cost and let's talk about these other things, right?
Right. So I feel like that's the way in, right? As long as everyone is in on the joke, you're fine, right? It's when, I think my concern is always, I have 2 small kids and a stepdaughter's in her 20s. Like, I don't want them to see this and be like, okay, great, then I can just keep spending in this like unlimited way, right? And like ignore cash. At the source of it, it's kind of really articulating the fact that so many of us try and run our personal budgets and even our businesses as women in what I call bank balance decision making. Like, if there's money in the bank, I can spend it, right? If money is already gone from my bank, it's already gone. I've already written it off in my head, And I think that we have an opportunity here to say, how can we talk about money more in this conversation? And perhaps how can we justify our purchases in more logical ways sometimes? Like, I too have watched many of the TikToks, and it gets a little bit extreme. And I think, though, the more that we can stop and say, like, is there a return on investment for the purchase that I'm making, that's actually a good conversation to be having, right, to be thinking through. And so my hope is that it starts to spur some of the more positive conversations that could happen instead of just spending.
Consumerism, just blatant consumerism.
Yeah.
Right.
And my fear is that, I try to be the cool mom, so I'm watching the TikToks and doing other things. And I recognize that this platform is also the platform where the Tide Pod Challenge stemmed from, which was a dangerous trend, So, but at the same time, more and more, youth are using TikTok as a search engine. So they're searching about financial tips and girl math, and they're using this as real information. And most of them aren't talking to their parents about it. And the fact is that they're not learning about personal finance in school. It's not a requirement in Massachusetts public schools. So unless this spurs conversations at home, what I feel it's doing is it's marginalizing the word girl. So I can understand, the way that girl is used in this, but on a very basic level, it eats at a young girl's self-esteem in the sense that, I'm just not supposed to be good at this. I'm just supposed to be buying the Starbucks. I'm just supposed to be doing this and thinking this is real money and feeling like cash doesn't matter. And the conversation is still around, you don't have to worry about that. Someone will take care of you. And that's what's dangerous. When we're not teaching personal finance from a young age in our public school system, and girls are separated from boys from a mentality of frivolous spending, then what are we teaching girls? When in the reality, the real girl math is that girls grow to be women. Women have jobs. Women make less than men. Women live longer than men. Women need to take off more time from work to care for their loved ones and elderly parents than men. So we're in a financially dangerous situation. So again, not to be suck the fun out of TikTok, that's where I go. That's where I go as a financial educator.
I think those are valid concerns. I do think that the joke, though, is that I reported a bit on venture capital, and I don't think much has changed, but at the time I think it was 96% male. And it's just, there are these barriers, right? Because so much of it relies on relationships, and it's based so much intrinsically just based in sexism, that I think the joke here is like, oh, haha, girl math, but the girls in the equation, they're not the ones who've excluded themselves from the narrative. Like you talked about on your podcast, you talked about Fin Talk, which is like financial TikToks and explaining, and there are really great resources. What are some ways that young women can find that are more approachable, like to learn more about personal finance and get in at an early age? So, there are so many like Fin Talks, and there are definitely some young women out there who are, giving some really valid information. Tori Dunlap is one of them. Vivian, your best friend in Wall Street Girlie, I think that's her hashtag. She talks a lot about girls and finance, but I think that honestly, it's having the conversations about money and asking them in your homes and within your friends and talking about it. I mean, socially, girls, boys, if they're involved in sports teams or extracurriculars, they go out afterwards. How are they paying for that? Are they getting an allowance? Do they have to, work for their money? Do they have to say no sometimes, or I'll just get the fries and not the meal because I don't have the money? And those are the conversations that are important to have. And as far as learning about it, I just do believe that this is something that has to happen in the schools. In the meantime, at Rockland Trust, we have a learning center, and we provide curriculum that teachers, parents, families can use to talk about money, to start learning about saving, sharing, and spending on a basic level. And then, like you said, listen to these little mini Money Minute podcasts on the No Shame in This Money Game podcast to, again, just really get some conversations started in families, within friend groups, talk about it. Because again, there's no shame in it. And everyone's coming from a different place, and that's what's really hard. Yeah, there is no shame in girl math. Also, I'm just gonna put it out there. But you got into this, it's shameless. You got into this business for that reason, though, to help people get through some of those barriers. Why is it like this? I mean, maybe that's a dumb question when you live in this post-capitalist world, but like, why is it that only certain people are allowed to have this knowledge and information to build that financial foundation? I don't think that it has to be that these people have it. The question is, who are these people? I guess I just mean if you were raised with wealth or an understanding of wealth. Okay. Although many people who have wealth don't have conversations about money. Yeah. So I guess just
I think in
that
general,
world? Yeah.
it's an under talked about conversation, right? So I started this business 16 years ago, back in 2007. Everyone thought I was crazy. They literally had a bit of an intervention for me because I was like going to be a personal finance coach, and they're like the spending rate was above the savings rate at the time, you know, and it was a negative savings rate. It was right before the recession in 2008, though. And I was very well poised to help people with this conversation, but nobody was having it. And I think that it's about us each taking a personal responsibility to say, hey, maybe I wasn't taught in schools because it wasn't part of the curriculum. I will say, even as an accounting major locally here at Boston College, they don't really talk about personal finance in the way that we need, right? And that it's up to us to say, okay, ignorance isn't bliss. It's actually very costly. Like, it's very expensive. And so it's like, okay, what do I need to know to be able to do this better? My company's called Own Your Money, right? So it's about, like, how do you own it so that you can take the responsibility and then actually reap the rewards from it, right? Because you get that, like, avoiding, and I had this period of time when my dad had a stroke, and I had gotten, like, under bills in mail. And I had this moment of, like, no one's going to come and save me. Right? But that financial independence didn't mean I had to do everything myself. I could learn. I could have a friend help me, right? I could find another way to get through this. And that's what I believe is possible when we each take responsibility for being like, okay, I never taught it. I can either keep blaming my parents or blame society, or I can advocate for myself. And that's really what I want to see people do. Like, I figured it out back then, became a self-made millionaire by let's see, 32. You know, like, it's possible if we start to take steps. And even in the workforce, like, I used to be a corporate controller, the women wouldn't advocate for themselves nearly as much as the men would. Like, it just, I feel like, furthers the pay gap that we're already struggling with, right? In that they would ask for more raises, bonuses, all of that along the way, and even more of a starting salary than women would. And I feel like it's up to us to really step up and say, we as women are a force to be reckoned with. Like, we can have some fun with the girl math, but we really know we are here to, I don't want to say do some damage, you know, but we're really here to make an impact on the economy. And that kind of gets to the whole she-economy that's happening. Like, the women are showing the world, like, we're here to stay, we are making an impact, and I think we need to pay attention to that.
And I think that that's what, you know, if I were a trendsetter, Tori, and if I got to rebrand Girl Math, it would be about owning your own money. It would be about reframing how to think about your financial life as a small business, and, you know, really having intentional priorities on how you spend, why you spend, and align it with what you love. And that, a lot of the things that the girls talk about in Girl Math are buying the things they love. Well, be intentional about that and be proud of it. And that is a way to pursue your passion, your life, your spending, and be really intentional about it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you both for your work.
And then wear it every day for a year and make it free.
Yeah. Because that makes it free. It's the wearability. What does it cost per wear?
Yes.
Thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's it for tonight, but come back tomorrow for Talking Politics. Katie Lannon and her panel will dig into the results of the preliminary Boston City Council election, which knocked out two incumbents mired in controversy. Then a look at the state of the migrant shelter crisis 1 year after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis flew a plane of migrants to Martha's Vineyard under false pretenses. And finally, as Mitt Romney plans his Senate exit, is the GOP pushing out so-called Massachusetts Republicans? That and more tomorrow at 7. Thanks for watching. I'm Tori Bedford. Good night.
At 36 and again at